This is Joanna Lilly. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Since its inception in 1949, Mental Health Awareness Month has been a cornerstone in addressing the challenges faced by millions of Americans living with mental health conditions. Although this month of recognition has been in existence for a while, stigmatization around mental health still exists. Throughout the month of May, we are bringing you episodes from the parent perspective to highlight this special month. Welcome to the Parent Series, brought to you by Success is Subjective.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
This week's parent interview is not anonymous. Missy Stevens is a mom of 4 young adults, the youngest of whom struggled with mental health challenges from a young age. Diagnosed with ADHD and mood disorder not otherwise specified, and despite trying medications, therapy, and countless other interventions, school and home were rarely stable. The breaking point occurred when he was excused from his boarding school for repeatedly using marijuana. Thus began the family's introduction into the world of educational therapeutic consultants and residential treatment. Missy was so inspired by the individuals she met throughout her journey, including parents, students, therapists, program owners, and consultants, that she decided to become a therapeutic educational consultant to support other families like hers through what is often an overwhelmingly emotional time. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Missy. Missy, thanks again for being a guest on the Parent Series of the Success is Subjective podcast. If you're okay with us just jumping right in, let's have you share a little backstory on what was going on with your child prior to the decision to enter the treatment kind of experience.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. It's fun to be here. I've listened to this for a long time. My son, so I have 4 children and 3 girls, and then the youngest is a boy. So my son, we like to call him diagnostically complicated. And that's because no one we've ever spoken with has been able to really pin down a diagnosis, which is okay, but was frustrating for a time. He was diagnosed with ADHD early on in 2nd grade. He experienced a lot of emotional dysregulation. He's super, super smart. He can hear something from like all the way across the house, even if you're whispering. He can look like he's not paying attention and spit back exactly what somebody said, even if it was a 10-minute conversation about something. So he's got a lot of really cool strengths, but his ADHD and his emotional dysregulation really caused a lot of issues for him. He had very low frustration tolerance. We saw lots of doctors. We tried lots of different meds, despite, I was one of those parents who always said, I would never medicate my 2nd grader. Well, never say never. Yeah, so just a lot. We got the kind of, my husband and I both talk about having PTSD from seeing the school phone number come up on our phone, because that would happen on such a regular basis. Either we had to pick them up or they were just reporting something that happened. So that really went on all the way through middle school. And then we found what we thought was a phenomenal school for him. It was a boarding school, which we hadn't really ever planned on, but it catered to kids with ADHD and executive function issues. And he was really excited about it because he had struggled in school. And so we sent him off. He loved it, loved it. But as many kids do, the spring of that year, he ran into some social challenges when he was introduced to pot. And he thought that was pretty cool because he got to hang out with friends. Like, he thought for the first time in his life, he really had friends. And so I get it. So he was suspended. Then he came back. He knew if he did it again, he'd get kicked out. He had to sign a little agreement. And he did really well for about 6 months. And then we got a call on Thanksgiving break saying he had been, they called it excused from the school.
Wow.
And we were to come pick up all of his stuff. So that was kind of the beginning of our, what I call our off-roading journey.
It's a beautiful image conveyed there. Like, okay, we are now literally with some like big tires and a Jeep going up and over some hills. Okay, so
Yeah.
what happened next? What was that experience like? Because being excused from a school obviously then reroutes the path. So what happened?
Yeah, well, we were a little bit in shock at first, and he was devastated. I mean, he had been as happy as he had been anywhere. He was devastated, couldn't believe it. We sort of couldn't believe it. And at first, we were just kind of clueless. Like we didn't even know. But in the very back of my head, I recalled that Jennifer Taylor, with whom I went to college a million years ago, I knew that she did something with schools and maybe with challenging kids, but I wasn't really sure. But at this point, we knew that there was no local good school option for him. We knew that he was halfway through his 10th grade year, yet the school he went to was not willing to give him any credit for that first semester, even though he was there almost the whole first semester. So I now had a 16-year-old who was supposed to be halfway through sophomore year who essentially was not. I didn't want to try another boarding school because we hadn't figured out the issue of how to handle his social life. So I called her and I left a message. I said, I don't know if this is something you do, but Jack just got kicked out of school and we don't know what to do. And, bless her heart, she was on vacation in Panama. She called me right back. And we spent much of that Thanksgiving break on the phone with her. And about 10 days later, he was off to Summit Achievement in Maine, which is an outdoor behavioral program. Some people said to me, they were like, you sent him to Wilderness for smoking pot? And I said, no, we didn't send him to Wilderness for smoking pot, actually. Like, that's not terribly unusual high school kid behavior.
Yeah.
We sent him because we were concerned about kind of his decision-making and his impulsivity, and we really wanted him to work on that. And given that it was the beginning of December, clearly he wasn't going to go to school at least till January, even if we found someplace. So I also thought, well, wait, you don't get to just not go to school for the next month. You have to do something. So, and as you know, Summit Achievement is a program that's kind of a hybrid. So they're out in the field 4 days a week, and then they're back on campus living in cabins and going to school the other 3 days a week.
All right. So a part of obviously the Summit experience is all of a sudden now he's got 0 credits from almost his entire fall semester, sophomore year. The idea would be hopefully he could recoup some of that while at Summit. Was that something that was done?
I think, well, yes, it was done. And it was part of our thinking. I think now in retrospect, and now knowing much, much more about this business, in retrospect, I realized the academic piece wasn't so important. We could have really caught up on that academic piece eventually without too much problem. But at that time, I didn't know any better. So the fact that he could do both was really attractive to me. He did end up doing actually his entire sophomore year at Summit. The reason that happened was because COVID showed up while he was there.
Oh, wow.
And so his story is a little bit different than kind of the typical Summit student, but he ended up being up there for 6 months instead of 3 months. They do have a program called Summit Traverse, which is like a step down program. So then the kids are technically in school 5 days a week and doing other activities 2 days a week. They did not leave campus because it was COVID. But as I told my son, I said, you can't really appreciate this because you haven't been home, but you're at least hanging out with other teenagers.
Yeah.
And obviously getting his schoolwork done and getting therapy and all of those good things.
Right. Because back home, had he been back home, it would have been a shock to the system.
Yeah. Because coming home, it didn't feel like it was a good transition to come home to his bedroom.
Yeah.
And be isolated in his bedroom and be trying to doing online classes. He could have still kept working through that Summit platform for his academics. But what I knew about his executive function skills was that was not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it puts you as a parent back in charge too of like you're managing the situation. Are you showing up, quote unquote, showing up for school? Are you doing your work? Are you waking up? Are you taking a shower? I mean, just what a completely different role that at that point too, especially had, he'd been in boarding school for, a year and a half. Now all of a sudden be back in that manager role. Not ideal.
No, not ideal, particularly because I had the entire family home. Everyone's working from home. We also had to move out of our actual home during that time because we had a mold infestation. So we had to gut our actual house. So we had moved to a rental while he was at Summit. And I had adult children who were back home because they weren't in their cities anymore. And it was complicated. So
Wow.
Yeah, so he stayed up there till June, and we had told him, we had kind of said, you know what, when you finish your course load, then you can come home, and then you'll get a job, and then we'll figure out what we're doing next year.
So how was, I mean, obviously, like you said, this is not a typical experience because COVID really like shut everything down. And for a lot of students that at the time were in a treatment program, the question was, do you discharge immediately and go home and you kind of are there until we have more certainty around what's next or how we kind of return to this kind of like peer community experience? Or did the program say, let's stay here, like let's hunker down, let's continue to operate and do what we've been doing? But obviously they have to make public health decisions at the time, so like tweaking the programming differently. But just curious, I mean, did your son actually enjoy his time at Summit? Like, how would you say that he, if we were interviewing him right now, how would he describe that experience for himself?
I think that he would say initially he was resigned. He knew he was going to have to do something. I mean, he knew he was, not that he was in trouble. He actually said to me once, he said, I don't understand why you're not more angry at me. And I said, well, I'm mostly just sad. I'm mostly just sad because I know how much you loved it there and that you don't get to go back, there being the school he had been at. And being mad at this point, I don't think really serves a purpose. You know, we got to figure out, like, how do we get you back on track? And how do we identify what are the issues you've got underlying that are causing you to make poor decisions?
Yeah.
So he would say that he went, you know, willingly. It was not hard to get him there because he was very aware that he was going to have to do something. He would say that it was challenging, particularly the social part, not the outdoors part, because he had gone to camp in Maine a lot of his life and he knew wilderness first aid and all those things. So he knew how to do outdoors. Now, it was December in Maine, so that's a little different than summer camp in Maine. So that was challenging. But I think he liked the outdoors part for the most part. What he did not like was trying to figure out the social pieces of it. He was the kid who always hated doing team building activities because his opinion is, well, I just know how to do it the best way. They should just listen to me and do it my way. So that whole piece of it, and that's what we knew actually was going to be brilliant for him. We knew that was going to be hard for him, and that's some of what he needed. He really loved his therapist. Mike DeLuca was his therapist. He loved him to death. He really did a lot of, when they were back on campus during both parts of his programs, they let them do a lot of cooking in the kitchen. They had a really great chef there who was happy to like work with them and teach them to do stuff. So he thought that was cool. I think he liked being a leader out in the field because he knew a lot about being out there. So I think he liked that aspect of it. He had to really figure out how to be an effective leader and not just, you know, telling people what to do. And if you ask him today, and I've heard him say this to people, so I know I can say this, he says each year he gets further away from the experience, and it was now almost 5 years ago, that he appreciates it more. He says, you know, I get it. And I think it made a difference. And it got me, you know, it was a wake up call to get me back on track.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do want to ask, actually, as a parent, we talk about that quote unquote back on track. So the question about, you know, this vision that we have for success for our children, what it looks like, and obviously like how you potentially envisioned like what his life was going to be like, or what you were hopeful that, you know, kind of would play out for him when he's at this boarding school. It might all of a sudden look very different now that like he's being excused from the school. How is this going to impact his academics, college trajectory, career path? Like, right, we just like go through that kind of litany of, well, now that this particular phase in your life now all of a sudden is shifted and we don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how we're going to get back to where that like was meant to be. So this is my long-winded way of asking you as a parent, with him going through treatment in his sophomore year of high school, you know, had your vision of success for him changed during that time and or for where he is now?
Yes. Well, my husband will say, and I totally agree, if you had told us 5 years ago that we would be where we are now, we would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. Even with all the things that came in between, we would have said, great, okay, fine, that's awesome. He is in college now. He's a sophomore and, doing well for him, which is great. He enjoys it. And how did our vision change? I think in some respects, the fact that he was a fourth child was helpful because, we had been through a lot of things with our girls, and every one of our children is dramatically different. So we had watched them go through high school and college and then get jobs and different things. And so I think you get really clear that, you know what, there's no one path. Everybody does it their own way. And not that it's okay just to totally wing it. I mean, as parents, right, we're responsible for providing some sort of, container, some sort of guardrails to keep them moving in a healthy way forward. But for him, we had been struggling a long time. It had been, really since probably first or second grade, he had been challenging. So I'm not sure that we had a clear picture. I mean, I do think we thought, because he was very bright, that yes, he would make it through high school, he would go to college, and then he'd get a job. We didn't have any expectation about, what college or what job or any of those things. And yeah, we didn't anticipate having this big break in high school. Like that was nowhere on anyone's radar. So yeah, we had to kind of regroup. And it was interesting because while we were at Summit, as you get closer to the end, there's a conversation around, okay, what do you recommend next for this kiddo? What's going to really support him in being successful? And we knew there was therapeutic boarding school, but Mike DeLuca, our therapist, kept saying he doesn't need therapeutic boarding school. He needs a supportive boarding school, and he needs one where it's small and there are going to be eyes on him and people to connect with him. But I think he can do it without therapeutic boarding school. And at the time, my husband and I were just so tired. We were like, are you sure? Because I don't know that we can take one more phone call saying it didn't work, And he said, and we were also really lucky because Nicole Ernst was our parent coach, because Summit's parent coach was on paternity leave while we were there. So we had Nicole. So we really had the dream team, I felt like. And both Nicole and Mike said, no, I think let's give him the opportunity. So Jennifer, we worked with again, and she helped us find some schools. Now, we couldn't go visit anywhere because it was COVID.
Oh, right.
So normally you would tell parents to go tour, and you might take the child too, and you try to get the vibe. Can I see my kiddo here? And we couldn't do any of that. So we got to watch slideshows online and talk to people via Zoom. But that was pretty much it. So as a result, we chose Middlebridge School in Rhode Island, and it was phenomenal for him. He would tell you that the first year was not great because it was COVID. He was a new kid. They were social distancing pretty much the whole year. They had to wear masks. Yeah. They couldn't play sports. But his senior year, he had a great year. He had a great year. And, it's still not normal, quote unquote, high school. It's tiny, but I think it was fabulous for him. I think the skills he learned, and I think what he learned about himself too, and what it was going to take for him to be successful, whatever that definition was for him, he really figured that out. So yeah, I think, he's on an amazing track. I think he feels good about himself now. And that's what we want as parents. I want him to feel like he really knows himself, that he's proud of the work he's done this far, that he understands what his mental health challenges are, because they're still there. Like none of that went away. He just learned better tools for managing some of it. And he's also really learned how to advocate for and accept support, and that's okay, that it's not a weakness to kind of create your community around you that's going to support you.
Yeah. And that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about it as, we hire people to help us in various areas. Like for our taxes, we have an accountant, and for other things, we have a lawyer, and for, we might have a personal trainer at the gym. We're not expected to have everything handled all by ourselves. Right. But I think sometimes our kids feel like they're supposed to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
So I think this process really taught him that it's okay. Like, you've got certain really good strengths, and then there are other things you need support in. Totally fine.
Yep. I think that's a really good indicator too of like just in general maturity and the understanding that we are not, the goal is never independence, because quite frankly we cannot ever be fully self-sufficient. We need supports. So that the goal is interdependence, and a part of that, like to achieve that goal, you have to have insight and self-awareness of what it is that you might be struggling with, and then kind of go through that process of, well, if I'm struggling with X, who is that expert that will help me with kind of sorting out or getting through whatever that issue is? And then the third component to that really is then with that information, right? Speaking with that expert, then what do you do with that information? How do you apply it? And do you apply it? I think that kind of sequence really is the most important for most young adults nowadays. And I think even adolescents too, at a certain point, once you're like still launching into adulthood, a lot of it is you can't do things completely alone. You do need help. And there's also an important piece about like that. You have to have insight and awareness around what do you need to get where you want to go, and then seek those resources out through the professionals that can get you there.
And self-compassion too, right? I mean, why is it okay? It's totally accepted that if I want to get in shape, I hire a personal trainer. Nobody bats an eye at that. But if my issue isn't getting in shape, my issue is that my executive function skills, just despite every effort I've made, are not fabulous. And maybe they never will be. And maybe, yes, if I worked really, really hard, I could do maybe a slight like incremental improvement. Why is it not okay for me to hire an executive function coach that will be with me? If nobody blinks twice if I go to the trainer 2 times a week. Yeah. But somehow if I need an executive function coach, people are like, oh, you should just figure that out. You should just use a planner, or you should just, well, okay, maybe, but not necessarily. So if he would like to use his resources to hire an executive function coach, great, because then that gives him time to do other things that he's really good at.
Yep. All right. So last question. What do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Well, first of all, and this is going to sound a little self-serving, but I would say it regardless. I so wish I had known what an educational consultant was when my son was much younger. Even if for no other reason than to be able to kind of get the lay of the land a little bit, to see what resources were available. We spent so many years grasping at straws and, trying different things. I was always amazed that his doctors could never tell me. I would say, his therapists, his psychiatrist, all of them, I would say, there must be something else we can be doing to support this kid. And they'd be like, well, I don't know. I was like, really? But had I spoken to an educational consultant, maybe in middle school, maybe not in elementary school, but I might have learned a lot of things that could have supported us sooner rather than later. Now, I'm also a big believer that, the universe has in store for us what it has in store for us. So things work out and it's all okay. But if I were able to go back again, I would do that. And then the other piece is how important it is to really take care of yourself. So I tell all the parents we work with, I said, you're going to want to hit me when I say this. I said, but it's so radical self-care is the number one thing you can do. You must be able to take care of yourself if you want to be able to support everyone else in your life. And if you are so stressed and so exhausted and so in your head that you can't focus on anything else, it's going to compromise your ability to help your child. If you're dealing with mental health issues, substance issues, any of the things that our kiddos deal with, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a long, and, we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. When people ask me, how's Jack doing? I say, today, he's doing great. Tomorrow, no idea. But today, he's doing great. So you need to train. The way you train is you take care of yourself. And that's going to look different for everyone. It's going to look very different, but I think, and finding a community who can understand what you're going through, because unfortunately, mental health issues in our country are still not really understood that well and not accepted. If I had a kid who had cancer, people would be on my doorstep with food. They'd be offering to carpool my kids to dance class or soccer games or whatever. You have a kid with mental health challenges and everyone goes away. And I'm not, it's not their fault. It's just people don't understand.
Yeah.
The birthday invitations stop coming, all the things, play date invitations stop coming, which I can completely understand, but it's hard. So finding a community, which, if you're in a good program, you have a good therapist, they can help you. But I would say that's really important as well.
Well, Missy, I really appreciate you taking the time to not just impart, right, at the very end, these words of wisdom of like what you wish you had known when you were a parent earlier on, but also just to be vulnerable and sharing your story. I know that when we had originally talked about this, you said, I need to ask Jack for permission. And Jack responded, well, you tell everybody. So, I mean, this is like, what's different about doing this on a podcast? But regardless, I still think that there's a level of bravery that comes with feeling comfortable as a parent, owning that your child had an off-track, quote unquote, experience in adolescence, and how you as a parent navigated that to get them back onto a track that felt like it was a better fit for them. So again, thank you for taking the time and sharing your story and sharing your wisdom.
You're so welcome. And thank you for doing this because, a lot of parents out there feel like they're out there in a vacuum and they're really not. So I really appreciate what you're doing for families.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. Put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at joanna@successissubjective.org. Be sure to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you are listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to the show. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener supported, made possible by our team and by you. You can support this podcast by joining the Patreon community at patreon.com/successissubjective. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.